Canada to the world. We have with us Steve Sarafinovski. Hello there, Steve. Great to have you with us.
Hello, Jose. How are you?
Doing great. Steve is a natural leader that began his career on the front lines of the transit industry and has progressed his versatile background through his experience in operations, technology, project management, transit scheduling, and resource management. He has a vision for efficiency through digitization and has led many projects and initiatives that have transformed the workplace, resulting in efficient processes and reduced costs. Steve, it's a real privilege to have you with us. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise with us.
Thank you so much, Jose, and thank you for having me. Thank you for everybody that's logged on and taking some time to talk with us today. What we're going to be discussing today is what I call efficiency, visualization, and change management beyond spreadsheets. So yeah, as Jose said, I've been in the transit industry for the better part of my career, always looking at efficiencies, always looking at doing things better, always trying to bring the best in what we can and make the best use of technology. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start off with a little bit of an introduction on today's topics. I'll give you a little bit of background on Metrolinx as an organization. And we're going to discuss two case studies. One case study is going to be regarding Go Transit and the driver online sign-up. The second case study is going to be regarding the Capital Projects Group, which is a division within Metrolinx, and the resource planning solutions. And then we'll have some time for your questions. Just some background. Metrolinx is a crown agency of the Government of Ontario, essentially responsible for the commuter transportation services and regional transportation, along with the infrastructure needs for the Greater Toronto and Hamilton areas. There's three operating divisions. They are Go Transit, which includes bus and commuter rail, Presto, which is our fare collection system, and we have our Up Express, which is the Union Pearson Express, which provides services from downtown Toronto to the Pearson International Airport. The first case study that we're going to be discussing is specifically within the division of Go Transit bus services, and it's regarding the digital online sign-up. Go Transit, one of the operating divisions of Metrolinx bus services, has an approximate ridership of around 11 million passengers per year. So there's about 850 drivers, about 510 buses, and it serves the Greater Toronto and Hamilton areas. Now remember, let's just keep in mind that these are all pre-COVID pandemic numbers. So this was the problem that was faced at the time. Now with such a service area stretching 11,000 square kilometers, you can imagine that there's multiple garage locations and a lot of administrative challenges that comes along with those locations, such as what we refer to as the driver sign-up. This is a process in which, together with the local union, the drivers select the shifts that they would like to perform within a designated, we call them schedule period or board period. That's just essentially due to manage the driver demand throughout the year, which of course, you know, everybody's travel patterns, the whole way of going to work, that will change definitely over time. And this will definitely facilitate that. So as you can imagine, with 12 garage locations and doing a sign up strictly on paper, that is electing the choice of shifts on a paper slip and then submitting it to administrative services or to a supervisor, there's a lot of room for error due to manual processing. We have a very large carbon footprint with this process, and there's an in-person sign-up that is very time-consuming, and it requires drivers to actually physically come to their garage locations to submit their preferences, which are then awarded to them based on seniority. This is an example of what something like that looks like. So over here we have the sign up preference form that drivers would write their selections in. And then these are the choices of shifts that they would have within any given period. And this had a high administration cost, as you can imagine. There was a lot of paper submissions, there was a lack of transparency, and it was a time-consuming process. The lack of transparency comes in the actual transferring of the information. When an individual or a user, an employee, makes their recommendations or submits their choices, then that is again by hand recorded on maybe a larger ledger sheet, and then again brought to a centralized administration area for processing. So the journey to improve this process involved a lot of stakeholder analysis. We needed to survey different locations. We needed to survey drivers. We needed to look at a cost analysis. That was why we're doing this in the first place. And we needed to really focus on training and what we were going to do in terms of rollout. KPIs were also established to monitor our progress and make sure that we had enough users to make this system viable. So if we look at the users, it's 850 bus drivers approximately. We're looking at office staff as well to process the information. There was an ATU, which is the Amalgamated Transit Union, the local union for bus services in this particular location, raised some issues because of the change to the paper process. They felt that it was an ingrained process that was in the collective agreement and that we needed to negotiate any different process. So together with our union partners, we actually agreed to start the process on a pilot basis and making it voluntary. We had to look at enough computer kiosks and printers. We had to look at system upgrades. What kind of testing are you going to be doing in terms of bug fixes? And then we get all of the technical components in place. And then it's the most, in my mind, the most challenging, and that's the change management portion in, convincing all of the drivers, supervisors, and support staff that this is actually in their benefit, building trust with any new system, ensuring that the proper results are provided with the system and that the correct driver in terms of seniority is awarded the desired choice of shift that they had requested. This involved a lot of info sessions, job aids, video tutorials. I mean, if we look at the training portion of this, we really need to keep in mind that the workforce as such are not particularly computer savvy. Let's say there is no requirement for a bus driver at that time to have any computer skills or software knowledge. So in many cases, there was people that had long tenure with the transit agency, and they were used to doing this process for 20 plus years. That was almost part of their life. And changing that routine, and something that's so fundamental to a driver's life, such as what type of shift they're going to be working for the next 6 to 8 weeks, that really needed some care in terms of education, in terms of showing benefits, and in terms of trust. So this is where we worked with our local union as well, and we decided to take a phased approach and roll it out at a few garages at a time until we reach a critical mass. And so that brings us to where we are now. And we have a 91% uptake in the system. We have all of the information is accessible through a web portal, and all of the relevant information for any driver to make the choices for their upcoming work selection is very easily managed, much easier than with the paper forms. We have reduced resources for sign up, 80% reduction in staff due to this automation. And it's not only the cost in the process. We look at increased efficiency as well, because the people that were actually administering this process were the frontline supervisors of the drivers, which in turn, now with this increased efficiency where the inputs 90% of the time are going directly into the system, bypassing many work duplications and many work overlaps and many process overlaps. That allowed for increased numbers of supervisors to be freed up to assist our customers and the frontline drivers. And there was a reduction in 80% of our paper forms, thus reducing our carbon footprint. And even with the paper forms, the logistics, I'd like to share with you some of the challenges of the logistics of providing those paper forms, is that we needed to make sure to travel throughout the service area to make sure that every single driver had multiple forms to be able to fill in. While one of the key takeaways of this was those paper forms didn't need to be replaced as often as they were in the past. And all of these incremental advances really in the end contribute to an efficient operation and contribute to the bottom line. So how did we get from August 2018 to 70% overall to April 2020 of 90% overall, as I'm displaying on this slide? What we did is, if you see this very colorful chart here that I'm sharing, is that we established a target of 80% across the board. And we looked at each garage area as we were rolling them out and compared which ones were meeting the threshold and which ones were not. And the area chart in the back here is basically the distribution of the drivers within each garage location. So what we did is this view and developing these KPIs for each area allowed us to really take a deep dive and have a look into the different garage locations and where we were doing things right, where we were doing things wrong. We would survey people that managed to reach the 80% threshold, and then we would take the same survey and look at the people in the lower thresholds, such as the 46 and the 60%. And then what we would do is compare their answers and compare where the stumbling blocks were. So we had a concerted effort with a project team working on this. And as a result, we have a breakdown, and we've seen huge improvements through all of the garage locations and all of the different signups. So you could see here that every single location that we had did show an improvement. The initial rollout of this was viewed by a lot of skeptics. You had a lot of people, again, long tenure in the job, very resistant to change, and actually proving to them that something like this is in their benefit, even showing them how they could access their selections on a smartphone. I mean, that was something, you know, truly special. And actually, it was one of the first ones in North America that rolled out with this particular software solution. And you know, I mean, you can go to any, you know, software vendor and such, and you can come up with solutions. But the real part of it, and I've heard it in some other presentations earlier on today, is the people part, the change management part, and how are you actually going to implement this new system? How are you going to implement this change while reaping all the benefits? Speaking of benefits, we now have a system that is flexible, it's automated, we have reduced processing time, it's easier to use, and it literally transformed not only the process of the workplace, but it actually transformed the visual of the workplace. If you walk into any garage location right now within GoTransit, the one thing that stands out is computer kiosks all over the place. There's reminders, there's job aids on next to each computer. That is the driver's portal for communication now, especially when it's dealing with sign up. We want to also expand this to include other processing, such as your time off requests and such as your all management essentially for the driver's daily functions. So one key thing about these types of solutions is that you're not really ever complete. So I have a slide here, what's next? So we have enterprise resource planning. We have increased employee web functions, optimized employee work assignments. Transit scheduling is a bit of an art, as you can imagine. You have services out there that are about 12 hours or running for about 12 hours, and you have to break them up into 8-hour shifts. What manner do you do that? What's best for the workforce? Those types of questions were very difficult to answer in the past, especially when you only had written documentation, or you only had records that were either stored entered in an Excel spreadsheet or written down. It was very hard to do those analytics. So that was an explanation of our case study number 1 regarding a workplace transformation, how we went from a paper sign up to a full digital sign up. Now, for my next case study, this is in another division of Metrolinx. So the first case study focused on the front line, the drivers operating a transit system, on the preparing them for the day of operation. In the second case study, using the same approach, we could use these methods and apply them to a bigger resource planning in this case. So my job title currently is Senior Manager of Program Resource Planning and Optimization for the Capital Projects Group. The Capital Projects Group is another division of Metrolinx, and it is responsible for, last I checked, was a $40 billion portfolio, which involves multiple GO expansion projects, 4 subway extension projects, 4 LRT and BRT projects. And that $40 billion number, I think that changes quite often. The last time, a couple of years ago, it was 20 billion, and I believe that's just going to increase. So what was needed in my role as resource planning and optimization was we needed a holistic approach to resource planning. There was multiple resource work streams, data sources, policies, and procedures. There was manual and time-consuming data provisioning processes, and there was a delay in reporting capabilities. What the goal with the resource planning and optimization area within CPG is to essentially, taking a project management term, resource level all of the different requirements on the multiple projects and programs that are all ongoing, areas where we need the same type of expertise on different projects. A really good example of this is the subway projects. One key, as you can imagine, one key skill for our engineers on the subway projects is tunneling experience. So those types of individuals with tunneling experience, they're not readily available on the market. So what do? We have to plan our resources in such a way that those capabilities are maximized across different programs and projects. And that's very difficult to do when you're looking at 3 separate reports from different sources. You're looking at 4 days to manually process information. There was literally the spreadsheet in the middle of your screens there. That was literally what was sent to our senior management folks for reporting on vacancy numbers through different projects and different delivery teams. There was a lack of visibility into the hiring processes. Every year, the project for the past couple of years, the province actually mandated and approved many large-scale projects. Many teams were ramping up, saying, I'm going to need X amount of resources. We rely on our contingent workers as well. But there was a very difficult time in getting up-to-date, almost near-time, real-time information. So what we needed to do was we took a project management approach initially to solve this problem. We looked at all of the different considerations that we needed for the resource plan. and that was skills and development training, consulting contract management, resource management, our workspace management, and program schedule management. So the program schedule management needs to be tied to the overall $40 billion program rollout. Our resource management is what each area in terms of resource skills and capabilities need. Our skills and training development is we need to work closely with our training partners to ensure that the training that we provide to our staff is relevant. The training, we anticipate what needs we're going to have in the future, and we develop training for those as well. And workspace management, we're going through a huge transition right now in terms of how we work, what our workplace looks like, and I'm sure everybody on this call is going through the same thing. So all of these considerations needed to be brought together into a very, very concise and a very accurate plan. The very first step on this was to make sure that we had the right stakeholders. We initiated a steering committee. We made sure that we had the project management plan, scope, and requirements all outlined. We needed to look at the quality assurance and the communications. We needed to look at the quality of the data. Essentially, that was the key here, to make sure that we had quality data. And then we looked at different mechanisms of rollout. We needed some business intelligence tools, but in order for you to get that, you have to build up the data to a certain quality in order for you to report the way that concisely for your leadership for it to be valuable to your leadership, excuse me. So this is where we are now. We have established methodologies and established processes to be able to report on KPIs on a weekly basis. The most they'll ever be updated right now is something like 4 days, which is a huge achievement, when before it took so much time to compile all of the information. It was very difficult to keep that information up to date, as the processes were very manual. We have a 5-year resource plan that both includes our contingent workers, our contracted workers, and our full-time employees. We also have, being a progressive organization, we acknowledge the fact that we need to have certain targets, and we need to have a certain makeup of our workforce. So we're able with this process to be able to examine what type of applicants we're getting, how do we increase our gender balance, where are we doing well, where do we need some improvement. We also have detailed hiring plans. Every single vacancy, there's about 350 of them at current time that are ongoing, and this is a huge influx for Metrolinx as an organization, as they've never had to hire this many staff with such unique and specific skill sets. So we also have our retention and our attrition data. This one is very interesting because we find out that, by these skill sets being so unique, that we find that we're promoting internally quite a bit, and in turn what happens is you create a bit of a churn in your vacancy levels. So having really detailed insight into the business allows us to address those types of problems. And here we also have a detailed vacancy dashboard that breaks down what the vacancy is for each delivery team, how long it's taking for those people to be onboarded and hired, and what effect is that going to have on the project delivery itself. So the benefits with this sort of rollout, as you can see, we have business insights we didn't have before. We're able to have conversations that were just not, that we're able to ask questions that we didn't have the data to ask in the first place. It seems that the more data we give our leaders, the more questions come back. Well, if you can find out, how long it took to hire employee X. Well, how long will it take if you change 2 or 3 aspects of the process? So we actually transformed the way that we look at the resource planning. We have much more visuals. We're able to see when projects are closing off, where perhaps you don't need as many employees, and we're able to identify where new projects are starting up. And we can start matching those skills to those new projects. This was something that was, again, very challenging to do in the past, just because of the data collection methods that were in place. So again, as I've said in my previous case study, that it doesn't stop there. So we always look to what's next. So we're looking at predictive forecasting right now. We're looking at scenario building. How do we build different scenarios for our project teams to be able to react to changing situations within the programs themselves? We're looking at enhancing our business intelligence tools. The one I think I might have mentioned before that we used for this project was ClickSense, but we have such a detailed and such an accurate database or a data source right now that we're set up in such a way that the business intelligence tools don't really matter. We're able to basically plug into various different tools. And we're looking at more system integration. We want to bring in different data points. We want to bring in the progress a project delivery team has had. We want to look at the success of projects. We want to look at some challenges that projects are having. Did a project was delayed because there was not sufficient resources? Is a project adequately resourced? We have the baseline right now to be able to answer those detailed questions. And we keep building on from there. We've established an analytics roadmap that is going to be the driver for CPG moving, Capital Projects Group moving into the future. As the projects become more and more mature, we're going to need to identify those skill sets that we're going to need through various phases of the programs. We're building up our descriptive analytics right now, getting into the diagnostics. Our next step is going to be doing that predictive analysis, getting those scenarios, being able to draw out if a project closes early, what are our options? If for a political reason one of the projects is canceled, we had one a couple of years ago, the Hamilton light rail transit, that was being ramped up. There was a change in government, there was a change in direction, and now we needed to, and that program no longer was suitable or viable. And at that case, we had a lot of resources that we needed to deploy. So that predictive analytics we need to incorporate into our program. And finally, sort of what we call as the holy grail, if you will. That's what I refer to, and that's the prescriptive analytics. This is where we start talking about artificial intelligence. This is where we bring in those different data sets, and this is where we really have systems basically coming up with the most optimal solutions that we weren't able to come up with. So in closing, thank you everybody for your time. Some key takeaways that I've had here for everybody is make sure the data is accurate when you're moving towards projects such as these. Make sure, most importantly, is that you have support from your leadership. That's what I've found time and time again with large organizations. When there is a change involved, the support needs to come from the top. And I'm ready for questions. Now, I believe, over to you, Jose.
Terrific, Steve. Very good. I'm gonna come back on here and let me change my background to fit the theme. So Steve, one of the questions that has come up as you were discussing the couple of case studies is why did you pick those two areas? And maybe they were not the very first ones you worked on, but tell us a little bit about the prioritization of this digital transformation in the organization. How some of these areas were selected, what kind of process, if any, you followed to get there?
Sure. So for the first one, essentially, there was increasing, if you call it, labor challenges, labor issues with the bus drivers in relation to the sign up. That was sort of essentially the problem that started. We wanted to do more insights. We wanted to look at what type of drivers were selecting what type of shifts. And I heard somebody one time say to me, "Oh, well, that's going to," or I think it was a union person that said, "Oh, that's going to be a logistical nightmare." And with technology these days, there is no real logistical nightmares as there was in the past. So what we were trying to do is essentially two things: reduce our cost, especially on overtime costs, because these signups were irregular events throughout the year, which would require somebody to come in outside of their normal schedule. And we wanted to normalize that. We wanted to make sure that we had frontline staff that were actually out on the front line and doing this, and then not behind an office where the individual has to be out on the road. So separating that administration and providing a much more streamlined approach. The second case study, resource planning and management for the subway programs that I mentioned, and some really big infrastructure projects in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. That was a dire need. That was really something that we cannot function without, because we needed to have that specific skill set. I hope I answered that, I think.
No, absolutely. And then as you talked about your roadmap and what may be ahead for Metrolinx, how are you going about deciding? There is a bit of again a roadmap that you show in your presentation, but how do you go about identifying the specific maybe project opportunities, if you will, on that road, on that journey? How you're doing that?
So that's actually a really good question, and it's basically a balance between our priorities, and I'll be quite honest. Sometimes there's some low-hanging fruit that you could just get there. The financial impact might not be huge right off the bat, but I mean, if we can find something, we're constantly looking at different ways to bring in for information to our people. So something could be, I'm not supposed to share it, but I will. But I mean, like, we're looking at an app, for example. If somebody, one of our leaders could get all of their KPIs, all the information that they needed, just sort of at a touch of really a smartphone, those are the kind of goals that we're looking at. A key thing in our priority thinking is, how do we best bring information to the person that needs it, rather than the person searching for the information? Sort of, if you think of, I like to use the analogy of the Purelator guy. He's got everything on his little machine. He goes house to house, and that's giving him the information. He doesn't have to call anybody and say, okay, where do I go next? That type of analogy, and what's ever possible with our IT partners as well within the organization.
Very good. Steve, give us a sense of how long you have been on this journey, on this transformation. How many years ago, or maybe months ago, this has really maybe not started, but really kind of taken on a bigger relevance for you and for the organization?
Yeah, sure. So throughout my whole career, I've been really interested in this. It started with a rollout of a computer-assisted dispatch and automatic vehicle location, and really getting into the technology end of it. So believe it or not, the first case study, the online sign up, that actually took 4 years. And the reason it took 4 years is because these are irregular events that happen throughout the year. You only have like a window of opportunity of maybe 4 times a year. And also, we did have challenges from our local union. Quite frankly, they outright refused at the very beginning to have any change to their work. They just said, no, we're not doing it. This is not part of our collective agreement. We don't trust management. We're not doing it. So there was a lot of negotiations. We didn't get it right the first time. We had a failure to launch once as people in this industry, that happens. The software wasn't quite ready, and that just gave an excuse again for the antagonist to say, well, see, we told you you're not ready for this. So that one took quite a bit, but actually when the ball started rolling, so to speak, it really increased. So we managed from 2019 to 2020 there to make some leaps, huge leaps. And the second case study, the visualization and optimization, that was, that's one of the feathers in my cap. I'd like to say that I made the move from operations to the capital projects group, totally new group. I used the same thinking that I've used in operations, and that's why I thought it was relevant, because I did transform the workplace in two very different areas within the same company using the same approach. And that one, I was in the role last year, and the transformation took about 10 months, I would say. I was fortunate enough to have great leadership supporting me. I drew out a team that I needed. I had the individuals in mind already, and I had, after seeing the problems, I made my vision a reality, and we haven't looked back since then. We're looking at different solutions, different technologies. It's just always a continuous improvement, ongoing.
Excellent, Steve. I have a comment and then a question to follow up on that. First on the comment, first of all, congratulations for what you have done. And I think the audience is supporting that as well, talking about your presentation and our discussion here as great, because this is a real practitioner view of digital transformation. And thanks for your openness and sharing that this was a 4-year project. And the reason for that is that a lot of people don't share those things, right? It's all like this 3-month project that saved $50 million, and nobody is like, wow, that was great. So I'm never going to talk about my 4-year project, right? So thank you for the openness, and because that's the reality of actually great enduring organizations. It sounds a bit contradictory, but the reason I'm going to say that is that as we have looked across hundreds of cross-industry organizations that have undergone major transformations, and it's specifically when it comes to improvement and innovation programs, about 50% of them start with a bang, and then within 3 years, they're gone and dead. 99% of them die within 5 years. So you had a 4-year project. So meaning that alone, you survived, quite a bit, because most organizations as a whole die, their innovation improvement programs die within those 5 years. And I think it speaks loudly about stewardship, about having someone who have purpose, passion, discipline, and a whole lot of resilience to continuously lead improvements and innovations through all this turbulence. Because a lot of 4-year projects, they just die on year 1 or 2. So with that, that was kind of the preamble. Congratulations, that's terrific, and it speaks loudly of your stewardship and others in the organization of having that resilience. The real question is now, looking back, since you have been on this road for some time now, what do you know now that you wish you knew back then when you're rolling these things?
I'm going to say it again. It's the whole people aspect. One thing that I think I've learned through this whole journey, even throughout my career, right? 2 things: no matter how much you communicate, you probably haven't done enough communication, right? And not everyone might not be as eager as I am to change things. I mean, at the beginning, I'll be totally honest. With the online sign up at the beginning, I thought, hey, I started my career on the front lines. If I had this tool, oh my God, my life would be so much easier. But people didn't really share that thinking with me. So taking a little bit more care and consideration, that and those are the types of experiences that have led to my my success, even in my current role. So never minimize the impact of the care and the detail of the communication and the training that you have to provide. We were actually providing some training with the bit, but basically showing patience and saying, okay, this is how Windows works. This is how, you know, a file works. And I mean, this is, I'm not trying to be disparaging to anybody. People haven't used it. They come from a generation where those types of things didn't happen. So that was a little bit surprising for me, I think. And if I would have known that, what I know now, we probably could have saved a little bit of time on the input. Maybe I would have got it right the first time. And I just wanted to say something about the resilience question that you said, and thank you for pointing that out. I was a really firm believer in that project, and we actually went through 3 directors actually during this time. A lot of leadership changes, but it was the resiliency, and you're absolutely right. It would have been so easy to say, oh my God, with all of this, you know, opposition to what I'm doing, I know I'm doing the right thing, but even sometimes you question yourself, is it really worth it? Is it really? But now we're in a situation, I mean, because of COVID and everything, where a solution like this, it's really good that they had it in place, because there's so much restrictions on how many people can come into a building. There's so many restrictions, you know, along those ways. But looking back, it was a very successful project, and it was through resilience, just like you said. Oh, I think you're muted, or
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead and toggle your camera back on, because your camera came off offline. So assuming that your camera is still okay, if you can toggle it back on the GoToWebinar interface. There we go.
That was my fault. Sorry about that.
Well, listen, I sometimes mute myself so I can hear what you're saying, and in my what the speaker is saying. In my last session, for those of us who are here in the last session with me, I was muted in the whole last portion because I muted my microphone, didn't realize that. I thought I was muting another speaker who had a phone ringing in the background, and I ended up muting myself. So I spoke for a couple of minutes with nobody could hear what I was saying. So don't feel bad. So this is great. This is part of learning, right? Learning through failure, learning through 4 years of hard work and things that work and things that don't work, and you adjust, you know, as you continue with a journey. So that's terrific. I want to go back to the audience here because there's another question. This one coming from Lauren Marino, and thank you, Lauren, for your question. And her question, first of all, she says, Steve, great presentation. And then the question is, how do you and your team stay ahead of the curve on new solutions to continuously enhancing this process? I mean, you show the roadmap there. I'm not sure which curve you stay ahead of, but I guess what do you how do you keep pushing the roadmap forward?
To tell you the honest truth, for the past, I guess 10 years, I guess, I've hired a lot of students. I've kept a lot of students, technology students. I've hired a lot of students from the University of Waterloo, which is a really one of the best tech schools around. And to tell you the honest truth, I've learned so much from students, making sure that you have a couple of bright students and letting them speak, letting them share their ideas, you know, staying ahead that way. Constantly researching all the time, and always, like, I mean, anytime, you know, I'm looking at, you know, something, always plugged into things like, you know, Gartner consulting things, and just trying to, you know, I feel it's my job as the leader of the group to be living in a space a couple of years from now, and my team is working on the day-to-day for now. It's almost my job to go out and see what's cutting edge, to go out and see how other places are doing things. And I mean, there's no shortage of that. Another thing I've taken a lot of advantage of throughout my career is I've gone to many conferences, things like this, exchanging ideas, networking, because, you know, at some way, no matter what industry it is, no matter what, you can always find some common problems and unique solutions on how to solve those.
That's right, Steve. You know, ultimately, to accelerate innovation, we need to create and work in environments where great people and great ideas can connect. And we are so thankful for you as a great leader of innovation and improvement for the organization. Took the time to be here with us and share your knowledge and participate in this community with us. So thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your insights and great journey with all of us.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for staying on.
Thank you, Steve. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Steve Sarafinovski, leader of improvement and innovation and digital transformation at Metrolinx. Lauren says back, thank you. That is my role as well. Wonderful, Lauren. Thanks for your questions again. Ladies and gentlemen, we are completing day 1 of Digital Transformation Workplace Live. I hope the sessions were useful for you, that they are applicable to what you do in your context. If you have comments, if you like to share your opinions, if you want to follow up on anything, you know, log on to the LinkedIn post that we have. You can look under my name, Jose Perez, on LinkedIn, and under that you can see the comments. And I'm going to post an update sometime this afternoon here, U.S. time. But go ahead and make comments, share, like, and keep the discussion going. Tomorrow we have tremendous presentations going on tomorrow from, again, digital transformation leaders and practitioners. We're going to, just as a quick overview for you, we're going to start with 3M, the 3M company, and the leader for improvement, innovation, Lean Six Sigma, and discussing the leader's role in culture transformation and sustaining the gains. Directly from the 3M company, and Michael Mullenberg, who has been with the company for over 25 years, maybe 30 years, as a matter of fact, as I look at his bio. And Michael, to be specific, he has been there for over 34 years. That's the actual number. He's going to share the experience of digital transformation at 3M. He is a lean expert and leader for the organization, and we very much look forward to that. We are also going to have a very cool presentation from April Boyd Noronha, who is the president of the Cyber XR Coalition. She's going to push the boundaries of technology with us in digital transformation, and she's going to talk about the top 4 rules of engagement for digital transformation for human-centered design. And just one more highlight for what's going to expect, what's waiting for us tomorrow. We are going to have Harris Apostopoulos, the Chief Transformation Officer for the PMO Global Alliance, discussing digital transformation and the game changer in the new normal. So excited to have all of those great speakers with us tomorrow. Very excited to have over 2,000 registrants with us, participating, engaging, asking questions that are meaningful for your context in our journey tomorrow. So thank you again for being with us today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Okay, do that thing then, because I was just listening to this guy. Okay, bye.